Good evening. I want to give you an example of what right looks like for the term paper. So you have an idea of what it's looking for and how to maybe better your writing for this as well as for future papers and classes. So this is submitted by a classmate, and I think it covers a lot of the what I'm looking for regarding analysis. So this is the intro section here. It talks just again briefly about the HSGP and the three programs here. A lot of times from the students, I got the whole paper just covered these areas, and it was just reciting the facts on Urban Area Security Initiative, Operation Stone Garden, as well as the Homeland Security Grant Program. I know what those are. You guys have already said that in your previous papers. All I want is just a quick couple sentence background to kind of lead into the paper. Again, and this is a lead into the risk assessment methodology that we talked about in the earlier classes, and he brings it up because he pins, or this person pins a lot of their paper on this, so it is appropriate to bring up in the introduction in a short manner. And then they have a short way ahead thesis statement, just so the reader knows, okay, this is what the author is trying to convey. So that's what I'm looking for in the intro. Always have kind of for a paper this length, have lead-in headings, and this is a good one here. And then the paper, why I bring this up is because it has analysis. It doesn't just tick off the facts. It applies these methodologies and gives proper recommendations, and I'll go through that right here. First, again, an overview of the allocations, the monetary allocations for the HSGP. And they bring this up because, again, point one right here, or I should say right here, a problem. Again, some of you kind of identified the problems, but didn't go in depth. This author went in inappropriate depth here. So here are the problems. It talks about the allocations of New York and California and Vermont, and just shows that there's a lack of per capita distribution between New York and Vermont, or the per capita is less for New York, when in fact New York is probably a much higher level target for terrorists. California is a much higher level issue for a natural disaster than Vermont is. Yet their per capita is more in Vermont than it is in New York. So again, the author is bringing up point one. This is problem one. Okay. Problem two, pork barrel, and this is outlining from the documents of the 9/11 Commission. Pork barrel prevents the more appropriate allocation of resources according to threat. So again, he's bringing up problem two. Second point, again, the author is leading me up. Here we're talking about the risk validation, the threat vulnerability, and the consequence, and how allocation should be based on this. However, he brings in, again, problem two, the risk, the critical infrastructure piece is not highlighted, or the national infrastructure piece. So population, again, he identifies population is a significant risk. However, the critical infrastructure piece is not reflected as a major risk. So again, the author is telling me problems that I can understand. So that's problem two. Problem number three, overemphasis on terrorist attack as opposed to natural disaster issues, which is certainly a responsibility for Homeland Security. So the author, again, brings in problem two, and he points out that there is no all hazards allocation for the HSGP. And then finally, point four, he brings up the kind of the way there's been a lack of accountability for how the states have used this money, that it is kind of a slush fund for them to invest in things that whatever they want. Right here. So, and there's no evaluation of how effective that money is using. And then finally, point five, the author talks about the private sector and how there's no grants for private sector. Even private sector controls a lot of the critical infrastructure, whether finance or cyber, that are important to secure. So if you're giving money to states and you're giving part of the HGSGP, you're ignoring all these private sector critical infrastructure points. So that's kind of, you can see how the author here just puts his points there, and he wraps them up with recommendations. And a lot of these recommendations, again, derive from the analysis that he said. But if I'm an author, if I'm even a policy, or if I'm a consumer or a policymaker, I can take these recommendations and implement them. I can write a speech about them. I can go on the House floor and explain why what needs to be done to make the $20 billion that we've spent on HSGP funded more effectively. So again, he talks about, or the author talks about making risk assessments as opposed to pork barrel funding. He also includes adding things like critical infrastructure, putting more of adjusting the formulas so National Infrastructure Index gets funded at a higher degree. All hazards approach, not just terrorism. And finally, evaluation assessment here. So that's kind of how the paper should look like. And I'll kind of scroll through this so you can read it. But it's the paper, I think, here is kind of a top-notch one that I think is a model for not just this class, but for future classes as you go through the Penn State Homeland Security program. So if there's any questions or issues, please don't hesitate to ask.